Yep.
It's been about as far as I've been
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah. And do you still have this car, or you're only using the Corvette now?
So we actually gave that car to my brother.
Yeah.
Um, so it's got a pretty standard LS1 T56.
Yep.
Doesn't have the winters anymore, but still has Wisefab and MCA all round.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a decent car for him to learn it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty good start. All right, cool. So thanks for joining me anyway. And
All good.
I've had a quick look at this video as well. So
Yep.
before I look at anything, what do you reckon you were sort of like looking for in this video?
Probably just a bit of niche guidance.
Yep.
I know I have, well, obviously started drifting in Darwin, which the pro man to beat is Danny Probert,
Yep.
who's just a dude that taught himself how to drift, and that's
Yep.
who I learnt from. So,
Yep.
when you get guys like yourself that have been around the place a little bit more and do it a lot more often, obviously a bit more niche
Yep.
skills is certainly
Okay.
something that I'm looking for.
Cool. All right. So I'm just going to skim through this first part because I know it gets to daytime. So
Yep.
that one's a little bit of a better view. Um,
Yep.
so one thing about this circuit, you can see this, yeah, and you can
Yeah.
hear it
Yeah.
and everything.
Yep.
Okay. Um, one thing about this circuit is that it's fairly basic, as in like when you go through it all, because
Yeah.
you do it fine, you do it perfectly fine, and I don't think there's a whole lot that I would say you have to change because the circuit itself is like you can kind of like put your foot down and go through it,
Yeah.
and it's so like you're pretty much doing what you can do, really.
Yep.
Um, so with that, like let's say if you wanted to, at that section there, if you wanted to
Mm,
use less handbrake, because obviously the more handbrake that you're using, then the more speed that you're losing.
mm,
So
mm.
you can like the one thing that you can do is to initiate just a little bit later so that there's
Yep.
less handbrake involved because essentially the longer that you're dragging that handbrake, then the more speed is lost. So it's like a bigger drop.
Yeah.
So if you
Like
end so
the
it's
hard thing about that section there is it's a downhill into the corner,
mhm,
and then if you came in too fast, you would blow straight off the edge of the track,
yeah,
and a lot of people are getting caught out with it.
yep,
As you'll see me chasing Matt Van Kirk
hmm,
towards the end of the video in Bo Yates's car, he just went so wide.
yeah,
So it's like you gotta like we were just drag racing off the start and
yeah,
then slowing down as much as we could for that corner,
uh-huh,
just so we wouldn't blow off because it's like slightly off camber
yeah,
once you get past the edge of the corner. It's such a pain that corner.
yeah. Okay, so so saying this section here is where you fly off if you go a little bit too
Pretty
quick.
much.
Okay,
Like it's probably a little bit more around the corner,
yep,
but as soon as you get like to the midpoint of the corner, it
hmm,
just goes from like cambered to pretty flat and to off cambered. So if you caught yourself out,
hmm,
you weren't coming back.
yeah, okay,
So it was such a catch because if you go too shallow too, the judges deducted you for blocking. So
hmm,
I mean, it was such an odd one. But once you got past through there, it was a real basic layout.
yep, yep. Okay, I'm just gonna watch a full run and then we'll go from here.
Yeah.
Okay. So that part there, you see how you like clutch to go. I know there's a wall, like a barrier here.
Mm, yep.
So I know that with that one, you're gonna fly off if you go too, like if
Mm,
you go too fast. Um,
yep.
but you can put more angle into it because obviously the more angle that you have, then the
Mm,
more speed you wash off. So it's
yeah.
like it's either have less angle and pull like use the handbrake to slow down,
Mm,
or use more angle so that you slow down. So it's like you kind of
yep.
reach the same thing, but the only difference is that if you don't drag it with the handbrake, then
Mm,
your angle facing the apex of the corner, which is like I guess it'll be. Can you see the mouse?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, that section there. Let's say let's say you had like a little bit more angle, then you'll be
Yep.
pointing towards here a little bit earlier.
Mm, mm.
So what you do, what you're doing now, obviously it works, but if someone's
Yeah.
chasing you because you got the handbrake on for a fair while like
A
that,
long time. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the run's obviously
Just
fine,
dragging.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that gives a lot of opportunity for the chase guy to jump in because when he's
Mm,
watching you, all he needs to do is sort of be like, oh, I'm just gonna go a little bit later than you, and then he's already gonna be up
mm.
your ass. Um,
And because you're at that rate of angle for so long, just pretty much pausing it with the handbrake,
yeah.
it's the perfect jump opportunity. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And then he's not even scared because you're sort of like on lower angle. So
yeah,
he's just like, yeah, whatever, I'm just gonna go for it. But if you had like more angle, then he's like, maybe he might be a bit
mm,
scared or something if he's not used to chasing someone that can use angle. But
yeah,
see, in this situation, I would go a little bit later, pop more angle, so that you still
mm,
wash off the same amount of speed, but you've had that extra second of
yep,
going straight, not drifting. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like what I really wanted to do, what the judges wanted was us pretty much flicking, best part in 90 degrees, running the rear bar along the wall,
Okay.
and then when the time's right, get off the handbrake
Yep.
and just pretty much power through the first corner and slingshot into the second corner.
Yep. So is
Um,
it a inner clip on that one, or is it a?
yeah, in a clip.
Okay,
Yep,
cool.
yep.
So that
So,
makes it even
so,
easier to, yeah, like you said,
mm,
shoot through. So then that's why sort of having more angle, because if you have the angle that you have now, it's once
mm,
you get to that point with this angle, then you have to compensate when you get to here, and then
mm,
you lose speed again because you kind of like you have to rotate to make the rest
yeah.
of it. Whereas if you had more angle earlier and then you shoot through, then
Mm.
you, obviously you can straight line it a little bit
Well, it
more.
was straight to the outside on the left there. So
Yeah.
pretty much you got through
Ah,
there, right?
I
And
can
then it
see it.
was a flick to the outside.
Yeah.
So if you
So
if you got it right, it worked absolutely awesome.
is it this part here? That those cones?
Yeah, but we're
Yeah.
turning to the right. So yeah, it's pretty much running the white line around the
Yep.
outside there
But this is
and
like
then
the outer
transition.
clip.
Pretty much that was the start of it.
Yep.
It was more of a zone that you had to fill.
Yep.
It's probably about 5 meters long of
Hmm.
outside clip. But yeah, that's one thing that I've always really struggled to get. And this was why I use this track as an example, because
Yep.
Wakefield, all those tracks that require that nice solid entry,
Yep.
that's just one thing that I've never been able to do any
Okay.
good.
All right. So the main thing with entries, so if you want to, well, I guess that's good that you know what you want to do.
Mm,
So
mm,
this part here, so that's correct. And then see how like the car is sort of still looking straight at the moment.
yeah, yep,
If you back off on the throttle and whilst the car is straight, then it has a harder time getting more angle. And
mm,
obviously you grab the handbrake so that it rotates around. The problem is with a
yep,
handbrake, it doesn't really um, doesn't make the car sort of like really pop. What makes a
mm,
car pop is throttle. So
yep,
momentum, weight shifting, and throttle. So they're using the rear wheels to spin it is what makes the
yep,
car sort of like turn it around. It's kind of like doing a tip in.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's like
yep,
if you just kind of imagine, it's not a tip in obviously because you're not trying to like go
yeah,
360 or you're not trying to loop it all the way around, but
yeah,
you kind of use enough throttle so that you to decide what angle you actually want. So if you
yeah,
want 90 degrees at this, we'll go back, try to find the spot again. It's important to listen to the throttle. See, so like at that point you can hear that your right foot's already backed off.
mm,
So when you back off, then that's the car at that point has decided I don't want to rotate anymore,
yep,
and so you're replicating that by using this.
mm,
But by using this, you're obviously slowing the entire car's speed down as well.
yeah,
And then
yep,
you also have a harder time getting more angle because the handbrake can only get you so much angle. The handbrake's like a good
mm,
tool to sort of help it keep getting
yep,
more, but not enough for it to go from straight into 90 degrees.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's with this car, it was a bit. longer than the Corvette. So the Corvette like snaps onto 90 degrees lock like it's
Yep.
ridiculous.
Yep. Yep.
Whereas this one was a bit longer in the wheelbase. It's 2 inches longer exactly.
Yep.
But I find in the Corvette it snaps a lot nastier. So that's pretty much resolved that issue. It's just getting the confidence and the throttle control to actually get it in there and consistently do it, because like to nail it every time, that's just one thing that I haven't had much seat time to do.
Yeah. So it's just trying to get like a consistency thing. So regardless sort of what car you do, because obviously different chassis will do things a little bit differently and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's it's more of a reliable thing to be doing is to use your throttle to rotate a car. Because the step that you should sort of take when you're getting a car to drift, obviously where we all know how to get the car sideways and whatnot, but like you think of it like as step one is to unsettle the car. So that's like your feint that you did, which is good. So at this point, the car is unsettled. It's starting to slip. So that's like step one. Step two is just like now at this point you need to decide what sort of angle you want. And unless you can get it to a point where the handbrake you can be sure 100% every single time that the handbrake is gonna be like, hey, I'll tug the handbrake this much, and that's gonna get me 45 degrees. If I tug it this much, it'll get it to 90. But typically, a handbrake can't really do that. It's like the handbrake kind of locks the wheels, but it has a hard time because having the wheel spin and using the torque of the wheels or like the engine to push it, because it's pushing and then also flipping around. So at that point, that's where we're using the throttle is what gets the angle. So that's how you decide your angle. And then after that, if you've got the angle and then you find that you're not coming up, you're coming up short for this maybe, or you're getting out too far, then that's the part where you decide, hey, do I need brake? Do I need handbrake? Do I need to use gas to push it back in? But that's typically the 3 steps that I tend to look at when it comes to like an entry. Is that useful, or does that make sense?
Yeah, with the accelerating through the initiation. So with this car, we really played around with the diff ratios, and we actually stuffed up at one point in time. So we had a diff ratio that the wheel rotation to cast terminal speed was wrong. So we didn't have enough wheel speed for how fast we were going. So being on the gas actually gripped the car up more. So this was the compromise that I had to make, was to like lock the wheels and stop them, because the more I got on the gas, the more the car gripped up and went. Just with the suspension setup and the diff ratio that we had, it was doing everything backwards. So to unhook it, I had to get off the gas.
Well, when you get into a situation like that where the car fights you a little bit and it's not really optimal for what you're doing, then or what you want it to achieve, what you got to think about is like how do you drive differently to adjust to it. So, so if you watch this, like let's say right now you say that the car is going to grip up if you if you don't pull this handbrake or if you don't do a certain thing, but regardless at this point you've lifted off. So but when you're lifting off, obviously the car is going to sort of gain its grip because it's not spinning the wheels anymore, but like I said, the wheel speed is a lot higher, so it's just going to be staying in that sort of grip zone, because it's not in like 5k or 6k rpm where it's like that peak torque section where it rips through everything and it can make it slide. But what I would do differently to compensate, that means you have to adjust with your steering a little bit more, because regardless sort of what wheel speed you're running at, let's say it's 8,000 or 7,000 and it's like the wheel speed is too high, it's still going to slip out and rotate if you turn more.
Well, doing that just lowers the terminal speed, which brings the ratio better for a wheel speed to car speed ratio, essentially.
Oh, was that again? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, so using more steering or more angle, as you said, essentially just lowers the car's terminal speed, and getting that wheel speed to terminal speed ratio better, which is what we found out was the problem in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, yeah, yeah.
So so like you still haven't. It's not like your car is underpowered and it's like you're not able to get the wheels to spin. By
Oh
turning,
yeah,
it's
it was
still
just gear bound. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It was just didn't have enough. I needed to go to fifth gear essentially
Mm-hmm.
instead of being in fourth.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just gear bound, not
Mm-hmm.
power bound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was hitting like 9 grand and didn't want to hurt it. So it was
Yeah.
just like keep it around the 8 mark.
Yeah. Okay. But just yeah, like if it's like not doing it, but yeah, you can definitely rotate. You can
Mm,
hear it because it's like you can hear that you can accelerate a little bit longer through it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because your angle is like maybe I don't know 40 degrees or I'm not sure
Oh,
what
it was
angle
pretty
exactly.
placid. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, to turn it a little bit more would get it more angle, and then
Yeah.
you can adjust through it like that.
So with that, as in like when it's coming back around, like turn into it a bit
Hmm.
more.
Yeah. So right here, we'll go back to the feint again. So at that point there, and then you can feint harder as well. I'm
Yep.
not saying you need to do it, as in like
Mm,
these are just things that you can do. Like if the info that you've given me, which is it has a hard time sort of like going through it because of the wheel speed, because it doesn't have as much
mm,
torque at that high RPM, then at that
yep.
point is when you got to get a little bit angrier with the steering because you
Yep.
have to use the front wheels to sort of like manipulate it a little bit more. Because if you do
Mm,
like sort of like simple drifting and whatnot, then it's easy to get to stay in like a low RPM range. Like, if you're doing like a
yeah.
figure of eight or something, it's just like you can
Yeah.
pick whatever gear you want and let it
Yeah.
sit in the peak torque. You put your foot
Yeah.
down and then it will just rip around. But once you get
Yeah.
into something like this where you're getting high speed, this is where everything's like you said, it's higher wheel speed. Then you just have to
Mm,
like if it's fighting against you and it's not coming out easier because if you jump into a car like your Corvette or whatever and
mm,
like everything you do is just like it's flicking out very easily,
mm,
then
mm.
yeah, then that's fun. But when you come into a situation like this, rather than be like drive the same way that you would when it's easy, then you got to start
Yep.
thinking about like a little bit out of box and adjust
Mm,
with your steering a little bit more.
yeah.
But turn more. So like if you see your arm here,
Mm,
uh, then you can obviously like if you let's say this is your I'll draw it. So this is currently where your hand is.
yep.
If you had to put your hand a bit more down like this, then
Mm-hmm.
and accelerate through it, then obviously it forces the car to rotate a little bit more.
Yep. So that's when the car's kicking opposing. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
physically, like after the feint on that comeback,
hmm
just turn it in harder and make it like
yeah,
be
force
rough.
it. Yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
like
Yep.
you gotta manipulate it to do it because the car
Yep.
itself doesn't really want to go to that sort of angle. The car wants to be
No.
comfortable
No.
and drive straight and be
Mm,
minimal. It's just on a small bit of slip. So
yeah.
the car
Yeah.
itself is never going to decide it unless you've got like two 1.5s in the back and it just,
Yeah.
it's a very slippery setup and it just wants to tip around. But
Mm,
if it's got a
mm.
grippy setup, because I assume you got like two 6.5s and you got semi slicks and whatnot on.
235 semis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it should be easy to sort of like get it around. But if you don't
Yeah.
force it to do it, then it's never going to do it.
Mm, mm.
Uh, um, Yeah, let's get back to this part again. It's good to watch these things. Um, so the less you faint, whoops, I get rid of those drawings. Hold up, clear. So see how your hand. Alright, okay, so we'll go get the drawing again.
Yep.
So let's say your hand is like that's the point that you're holding your steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then we'll play the next part. So that next point there
Mm-hmm.
is how much
Pretty
you
much.
turn. So this is
Yeah.
getting like super science.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your
So it's
range.
essentially 3 and 6 o'clock, essentially,
Yeah,
is what it looked like.
yeah. Um, but if you imagine, so that's how much you've turned, right? And
Hmm.
imagine if your left hand was the one that did the actual weight shift or the feint, because
Mm,
obviously you did it with one hand and you're having this ready on the handbrake because you want to grab it
yep,
ASAP. But imagine if your left hand was on this, okay,
yep.
and you feinted. Okay, so the same amount here is like your hand
That's
going up here.
12 o'clock. Yeah,
12 to like, oh, it was 9 to like maybe 11 or something,
yep,
roughly. Or I don't know the range, maybe even more like that. So this hopefully it's
yep.
not getting confusing.
No, no, I got you.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. But to have a good feint sometimes is requires this left arm to be all
Yeah,
the way over here. So it's
yeah.
imagine your right hand has gone like all the way over to this section over
Mm.
here, which you can't because otherwise you'll be elbowing your ribs.
Yeah, yep. Spaghetti arm in it. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so much like when you were turning left, your right arm was the one that went over this side.
Mm. Yep.
It's the same way when you want to drift, because essentially, even though it's a feint and it's the smallest drift, you're still
Mm.
drifting that way. So you're drifting right. So when you're drifting right,
Yep.
then it has to be your left hand
So,
that
so
pushes
with
across.
that,
Hmm.
uh, essentially, like when you say feint, as in like power into the opposing direction, flick,
Yep.
buzz the tires, and then flick it back, or are you
Yes.
talking like a momentum in? So you're talking about buzzing the tires in the opposite direction.
Yeah. So it's only like the smallest slip. So it's only just at the point
Yep.
where it slips, but you need to be able to catch it because it's like,
Yep.
especially when it's a corner where it requires you to get onto angle quickly.
Mm, mm,
Because you're trying to be as quick as you possible. I assume that's the goal because it's a
yeah.
competition. So
Yeah.
the longer time that you have going straight towards the first corner,
Mm,
then obviously you're quicker that way. And then the quicker you can get it to angle
yep.
means the less time you're spending actually getting it to rotate.
Yep.
Because obviously there's that window of time
Mm,
where you're trying to get, let's say, from going to 0 degrees to 90 degrees. Let's
yep.
just say, for example, that it takes 1 second to do it
Mm-hmm.
to get there. And if you
Yep.
increase that time to 2 seconds to get to 90 degrees, then that's more time wasted on you going slower and
Mm,
not meeting the apex of the corner.
mm,
Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very important to, use this to unsettle the
Mm,
car. So that's why, like, if it's already having a hard time to sort of lose grip and to throw
yep.
itself, then you have to put a lot more steering input to force it to do
Mm,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Obviously not to the point where you understeer the car, but then you
Yeah.
know how
Yeah.
the car behaves, you know
Yeah.
how to feel it.
Find the limit. Yep.
Yeah. But just by looking at that, it's not enough input to sort of throw a car around.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
And it shouldn't be difficult when you have, how much horsepower does this have? What, 600?
At that point in time, it was like 750.
Okay. So like 750 to turn 235s shouldn't be difficult.
It to give you an idea, it was faster than most 265 cars. Like
Yep.
it was hooked up to
Mm.
the moon, like
Mm.
way overkill grip wise. So
Yep.
yeah,
Okay. Yep.
it was speedway combination in that suspension one. So
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
would have been fast on dirt, let alone asphalt.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, it's good. So if everything's gripping up and it's doing what you
Mm,
need it to do, so you can take off the line and you're going quick. You don't have wheel spin,
mm,
and it's
mm.
obviously, it's like you need to give it more rather than pull it back. Because sometimes people
Yeah.
have setups where they're spinning wheels too much. Then the game is
Mm,
to sort of pull it back and try to get grip. But in your case, you've got all the grip that
yeah.
you need. Now you just need to
Yeah.
sort of be a bit more aggressive.
Aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's mainly just not getting mixed up with, because also with this, if you use your right hand to turn with it, and then you got this
Mm,
hand ready on the handbrake, let's say,
yep.
um, get away. Let's say at this point you're like you fainted to, like you turned and then it lost control. Like
Mm,
it's pretty hard. You don't have this to help you, and this one's already. I'm
yeah.
saying
Yeah.
you've got the counter steer going, but I'm just saying that like
Yeah.
if you rely only on your right hand to sort of do it,
Mm, mm.
then it can easily lose control as well. So it's good to have
Yeah.
the
Both.
left hand like push it
Yeah.
in, and then you'll be able to pull it out. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And the other thing, like I had a pretty big surgery on my right hand, so now that left hand drive, that's my floating hand now. So I'm
Okay.
solely relying off my left hand, but it
Yeah.
has big power steering and everything like that. So it's like one finger steering wheel now. So
Yeah.
it's a lot easier. But
Yep.
even then, it's like I'm only running a 290 mil steering wheel instead
Yep.
of a, I think this one was a 310 or 320, like a lot smaller steering wheel too.
Right.
So it's so much easier to keep my hands on it. And it's
Yep.
a 540 steering rack instead of a 900. So
hmm
the inputs required are a lot less.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I'm a lot more aggressive, just because my muscle memory is making me move, 90 degrees of the steering wheel still.
Yep.
But because it's a 540 rack, it's a lot more rack movement
hmm
instead. So I think that's one thing that's from based off of what you've been saying, keeping that going essentially from 90 degrees of movement clockwise or anti-clockwise, we're going to 200 and 130 degrees of counter steer on the flick.
hmm
So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Just adjust, so it doesn't matter what car you drive. You'll
Mm.
feel, well, if you turn this much, then it gives you. It's all your arm. How much you turn in is always how much it decides how much angle
Yeah.
you're gonna have. But the key point is to never, when you're trying to get angle, you can never lift off, because
Mm.
it also gives you sort of like the risk of straightening up. Sometimes the handbrake doesn't work exactly how you need it to.
Yep.
And if you don't have the angle to sort of ensure that it's gonna go to that angle,
Oh,
to
yep.
whatever, 75 degrees, 80 degrees, then you're gonna
Yep.
be in shit. So it's like the throttle
Mm. Mm.
never sort of like the throttle never lets you down. You put your foot down and
Yeah.
you turn in, it's gonna start drifting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
But yeah, all the throttle control and everything sounds good in this. Sounds like you got a lot of good grip through it.
Yeah. Oh, this car was like the easiest thing to freaking drive with throttle
hmm
control because it was so torquey. You just ease the throttle on and off as required, and it
Yep.
would just grip up and take off.
So watch this part here. This is probably a better view than before, but
Mm. Yeah.
like you can see, it's not really unsettling the car.
Yeah. Not enough.
Yeah. So
Yep.
then if you don't unsettle this part when it's going this way to sort of like, yeah, unbalance it, then it's
Yep.
so much harder on the next part. And then the next part, to compensate for this at this point here, because sorry,
Yep.
yeah, to compensate for that, like a small turn in, then you need
Mm.
to give it more that way.
Yeah. Yep.
Like
Actually, I think I know where a good example is. If we go right to the end, there should be me following Bo's Toyota 86
yeah,
at the end of the video somewhere.
looks like it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Matt Van Kirk's flick in was probably a good example. Um, buzzes the tires in that direction, nips it up, washes a bit wide, but the entry that you're talking about is in buzzing the tires in the opposing direction, then flicking in, and then getting
Yeah.
a nab of the handbrake when you need to maintain that angle.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're chasing, so it's not, you can't really compare.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
to some degree, you have to do something like that when you want to get something to angle quickly. Because,
Mm, mm,
like I said before, if you don't have traction broken already, so if you're going straight
mm,
and you got to do whatever you need to get, let's say you're just going completely straight and then you just clutch kick
mm.
to the left,
Yeah,
the car still doesn't sort of like break it instantly and get into angle. Like it
yeah,
has to have
yeah.
time. Let's say it takes 1 second,
Mm,
but
mm.
by having this sort of like break of traction before that,
Yeah,
going the opposite way, then it gets to that in half a second. It doesn't actually.
yeah.
I'm just saying random numbers, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. In theory, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it
It
gets you to that angle.
decreases the time of rate to angle,
Yeah,
especially.
that's it. Um, so yeah, it's just like trying to suss out it depends on the corner too, because this one is like I mean, it's not a hairpin, but it's definitely going
Mm,
sharp and like a 90 degrees. So
mm,
at this
mm,
point, at these sort of corners, then obviously you have to get it to angle quickly. Otherwise, you're just going to go off
mm.
into this part here.
Yeah, yeah,
You need to push away from these
yeah.
these
Like
sections.
Matt early apex then, and it just blew him wide. So
Yeah,
yeah, holding more angle wider for longer and
yeah,
then coming in off of it.
yeah.
That was the challenge. Everyone
Hmm.
was struggling with it.
Yeah. So it's just a particular skill to work on, for a lot of people
Yeah.
because understanding how to sort of use the throttle to turn it around. And then a lot of people sort of don't really think too much about how
Mm,
much arm movement to go across. Like
yeah.
it's like the
What's too
default.
much?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, as in like the default is like maybe we'll just go sort of that sort of range.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes you'd be like, hey, I want more angle, so I'll just go like I'll put my hand this much instead. And if I
Yeah.
want even
Yeah.
more angle, then I'll just put even more like that. Like it's
Yeah.
just depending on the corner. So like if it's a hairpin, maybe I'll just do it all the way over here.
Yep.
But you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
gauge. But if
Picking this
everyone,
the degree for the scenario. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But like with this one, you've chosen to use this one. Oh my, it's all
Mm,
purple. Um, yeah, for like for something that probably would be this one, like then maybe you've used this one, and then you got to compensate with handbrake to get to that same
mm,
angle.
mm.
But you've gotten there at a slower rate.
Yeah. So with that, you're talking about so going from like I've got my I'm sitting in my sim right now.
Yep.
So essentially we're going from center.
Hmm.
So instead of going from 90, go to like 130
Yep.
and then so 90 on the faint in
Yep.
and then 130 on the turn back and then counter steering and then grab the handbrake after
Yeah.
two hands of that
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
So
So you're just
coming
trying
into the
to,
corner 90 degrees flick and then
because like,
grab the hand.
um, let's say, because if you do like if you grab the handbrake first when you're trying to get it
Hmm.
to angle, then obviously if something goes wrong, because you're like
Yeah,
you're trying to eliminate risk as well,
with
and you're gonna trying to
one-handed.
keep,
Yeah.
yeah, you're trying to keep it consistent. Because like, what if I know sometimes it works out maybe 9 out of 10 times, but
Mm,
it
mm.
only takes that one time to lose that top 16 battle or the top 8.
Oh,
So
happened to me not long ago. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
First
you know.
event in a $200,000 car, and yep, that happens. Yep.
But like, relying on that one hand to do all the correction if you get into shit, it's like then
Mm,
that's where you pull the handbrake longer, you've lost all your speed, the car in front is pissed off,
yep.
and then you're playing catch up. So it's all sort
Yeah.
of making sure that you eliminate all risks as much as possible.
Yep.
But just knowing, yeah, applying that sort of angle, how
Yep.
much to turn on for what corner, I think that's what's the
Mm,
most
mm.
important, and powering through it. I did see, because we watched this one. I did have a quick skim of the other one, and I saw it do similar on this one. I think Calder.
Oh, the colder one.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mr. Timid here. Jesus. Yep.
this must be a while
I
ago, eh?
hate
Three
that
years.
so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's not long ago.
Okay. Um.
um, this track, the one thing that I've never done is driven on a proper bank track and
Mm.
flicking it up the wall.
Yep.
I just had no kahunas to even do half of the angle what everyone else is trying to do
Yeah.
and get up to the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah.
That's okay. But yeah, it's just more like a consistency thing. So if you're like confident that the car is gonna do that, the same result every single time,
Yep.
then you'll be more confident to do it when you go drive in unfamiliar areas. Because if you've tested it
Mm,
and you know that, on your home track in NT, you're
yep.
from NT, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
Darwin.
If you're like, if you do the same thing at home and every time it works, so you found something
Mm,
that has the same rhythm, then obviously it doesn't matter
yep.
what track you go. You know that if even there's a bank, then you go, oh, I need to obviously because it's going uphill, then I need to
Mm,
turn in harder. But
yep.
this is like similar to your what was that other track called? Was it Sydney Motorsport?
Sydney
Park or something.
Motorsports Park. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, it's pretty much the same. It's a
Yeah.
small turn, and
Just in
then
the opposite direction.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the the faint oh man, where does it come back?
Needed to faint so hard up the bank here. Like
Yeah.
you had to send it.
Ah, shit, piss off. Oh, you already turned in. But yeah, the car hasn't sort of like gotten any angle. Like it hasn't even
Mm,
slipped its
mm,
wheels. It's just gripped itself up there.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
in this instant, I think you would probably already know what I'm suggesting. Yeah.
Just yeah, got to get to that, 100, 130 degrees of the flick in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So might have to turn more, or you can even try clutching it.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Whatever it
I
takes.
think I think because that was turning up the wall, like
Yeah.
the just squeezing the throttle and turning harder
hmm
would
hmm
have loosened it, and then just the big aggressive turn back in would have
Yeah.
been enough.
Yeah.
Because like
Uh,
listening to Bogger and all that
yeah.
in the chaser, he clutch kicks and then kind of bobbles along in the wrong direction, and then he
Mm,
just does this huge snap and
yeah.
just rate like huge rate angle, and then
hmm
just lets it slide into the corner.
Yep. Yep. It's mainly just holding your sort of power through it because at
Mm,
that point, see, like, I mean, it's sort of the angle's still sort of looking straight and you're off the
mm,
power already. So there's
yeah,
just no chance that the handbrake is going to do that, 90 degrees or whatever angle you need to
yeah,
get to that
yeah.
apex. But yeah, I think that's what I see when I look at the videos because the rest of it, when you get into mid-drift, like your throttle control is
Mm,
good.
yep,
So same thing there, even on transitions.
yep.
Because also it helps, like, let's say you're like got someone in front of you and you're trying to
Mm,
switch on them or
yep.
transition onto them. If you put on the handbrake, because if you think about if he's not a driver that's going to handbrake as well, and he's one that
Mm,
sort of uses the throttle to rotate it around to that hairpin on the next part,
mm,
then you're going to fall back
mm.
because he's not using handbrake. So you have to
Yeah,
follow the
just
same thing.
powering through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So at that point there, we're still looking straight pretty much for the
yeah.
corner because the hairpin's about here, right? Coming up soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's not a big gap in there.
Yeah.
It comes up
Yeah, it's
pretty
tight, eh?
damn fast.
Yeah.
Ah, it's the keyhole. Like you can barely fit one car through the gap in the wall, let alone two.
Yeah. But yeah, that makes it difficult if you don't sort of rotate. You get like I don't expect you to sort of like
Mm,
mash it all the way and then do a big backy or anything like that.
yeah,
But it's just that split second that makes the difference when you're trying to get the
yeah,
car to transition. So if you just
yeah,
hold on the throttle just a little bit longer, just so like I mean right now it's like and then you got to go and then you can back
yeah,
off. Yeah, just to help it
yeah.
get it around.
Like the statistical rate of getting this entry into the keyhole right,
Mm,
very, very low.
hmm
Very low.
Yeah.
For most people, like unless you were, because what, like if we come back a little bit to the bottom of the bank,
Yep.
um, yeah, about here.
Uh-huh.
What I was having a problem with here was I wasn't at this point wide enough out and getting to the wall and using all the angles. So I was probably half track
Yep.
and going in so fast that
Yep.
I'd either have to full on like 90-degree entry to wash off enough speed or handbrake and left foot brake, right foot brake
Mm.
to just try and slow the car down and then get it in. Like
hmm
I
hmm
just wasn't pushing out wide enough coming off the bank onto that first wall, which as soon as it rained, problem solved. I slid out there and
Yeah,
bounced
you
off
can
the wall
drag yourself
every
forward.
lap.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like a pinball course as soon as the rain came, which was great. It did exactly what I needed it to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just getting out to that first wall and then getting over, because if you didn't get out to the wall, you also didn't get enough of a chance to flick it, um, which I found out later was
hmm
a requirement.
If
But
you're having a hard time at that second, after the first corner and you couldn't get out to
Mm.
the wall, that all
Yep.
starts from the beginning.
Oh yeah, way
Yeah.
back at the start. Yeah.
Yeah, because you've already lost the speed of like not having the momentum to go through like from the first
To
entry.
wash out to at the exit. Yeah.
Yeah, so you like want to carry the momentum. So if you like, um, if you get all to this, you get to this point and then you have to drag yourself, like a lot
Mm.
of handbrake at this part, then obviously you've already lost all that speed, and then you can't use all that time to sort of accelerate all the way through and get it out. But
Yeah.
then it's also like a management of, how much angle you put into this part here, because obviously
Yeah.
if you go mid apex and you've got 70 degrees of angle or whatever, then you
Mm.
don't have the speed to push out to the next corner. So
Yeah.
it's a setup for the next corner.
I think I actually have a GoPro video with that exact corner, the one that you're watching now,
Yep.
with how much speed I was dropping. Because
Okay.
from memory, we were coming at 112,
Mhm.
and by the time we were mid corner, it was considerably less by
Yep.
that time. Same with Sydney Motorsports Park. We're actually entering at pretty much the exact same speed. We used a different gear ratio for the keyhole on that track, though.
Mhm.
Um, God, it should be just here somewhere. Here we go. So let's see what it was. Yes. So we were coming in at 118, and then by the time that we hit, mm, well, pretty much by the time I was off the handbrake, it was about 89 kilometers an hour.
Yep. So yeah,
So,
so with that sort of data, you know that the car slows down really quickly. So then,
mm,
for yourself as a driver, then you need to know that you need to enter later because you know that the car's going to slow
mm,
down quicker.
yeah,
Because I guess you might have entered thinking that it might be like a regular corner without the bank and whatnot.
mm,
So, your prediction of like where you wanted to initiate was at a
yep,
regular point, but really this one needed to be like 2 seconds later or something to have that
mm,
nice flow that gets through that main corner.
yep.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a real challenge because, yeah, it's just a weird track.
Yeah.
Because then you got the the bank, and then you've got the big harsh joint in the racetrack where it goes from the bank to the flat surface, which just unsettles the car like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, and then trying to regather your thoughts and get out to the clipping point. It was just like three corners in one. Looks like the most basic ass track with two corners, but it's a rake fest. Just
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
get your head around it.
Yeah. Um, Also what I was saying before, how like you can just enter later. The other part
Yep.
that will, you can still enter at this same point, but
Yep.
if you accelerate longer going through it, then that will
Mm,
also skip it ahead too because you're still accelerating and pushing forward rather than uh,
yeah.
the handbrake sort of slowing it down. So there's quite a few
Yep.
factors involved. It's just sort of thinking about it and
Mm,
using what you need to use to be able to get it around.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, like we're gonna bring the Corvette to Darwin as soon as the wet season ends.
yep.
The wet season begins,
Hmm.
and we'll pretty much probably private hire or just go to a local drift event,
Yep.
and pretty much all the stuff that we're discussing today,
Yep.
I'm gonna put into practice
Yeah.
because I'm
Cool.
also gonna test the new gearbox.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's the steering input especially. That's one thing that, and doing that and then delaying the handbrake as much as I can because
Mm.
only using it as a necessity if
Yeah.
need be.
Yeah. Think
Um,
about the handbrake as more of like it's literally to slow your car down while you're sideways,
mm,
but not a tool to get the car sideways only. It's
mm,
like it's a secondary tool,
yep,
whereas a lot of people tend to use it as a primary tool. But your
mm,
primary tool to get the car sideways is using
sure,
momentum.
throttle.
Yeah, throttle,
Yep.
momentum, just getting to naturally do it, and then you kind of use that
Mm,
as the secondary tool. Because you're like, imagine if you go up to a corner and you're doing an entry, and you're like, I'm doing all those things like momentum, weight
mm,
shift,
mm.
using throttle, and then it like kicks out, and then you're like, oh shit, then you handbrake. But like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of driving tends to be like, go up to it, don't do a whole lot of weight movement or
Mm,
throttle, and then just go, I'll just use the handbrake to get through, and then
yeah,
it's never reliable.
yeah. Well,
And
that's the way I was taught because that's all everyone in Darwin knew how to do was
yeah,
just
okay,
drive up to a corner,
yeah,
yeet the handbrake, and
yeah,
then hope you've got enough power to chip the tires after.
yeah,
Um, so that's what I was taught from the start, and I've just developed that bad habit for so long. That's
mm-hmm.
I don't like literally watching FD and all that stuff. They're probably not the greatest examples, but watching them, they technique is here and there. I guess different drifting styles, different opinions, but
Yeah,
I've just kept the bad habits for so many years. It's just like it's become muscle memory. I don't know any better.
yeah,
So
yeah. But it's good,
I
man,
mean,
because if you like, you're open to, because you obviously you want to do better. So then if you're open
yeah,
to sort of improving, and you'll learn different things because you never stop trying to get
mm,
better. Um, but yeah, they're like they fall culprit to the same things. But the difference is, when you got, it's hard to ever recognize that there's something wrong because when you have so
because
much
if you don't know
power,
any better,
yeah, and then if the track sort of like doesn't cater to um, having any consequences when you do things
mm,
like that, then it's like even less incentive for someone to actually go, hey, I need to
mm,
work on this. But the people that do have those fundamentals better are the ones that win
mm,
more often. I mean, like
yeah,
James Dean is an example.
oh yeah,
Like
Mecca,
he will
incredible.
do all those things that I just mentioned
Mm,
very well. So,
yeah,
and then you can watch someone else that does it, and then they're just like holding onto the handbrake for ages, and then you wonder why someone like him is on them straight away or is pulling
yeah,
away because you're just doing everything, using every single tool of the car
mm,
to make it happen to satisfy the
yeah.
judging criteria.
It's an odd one when talking about judging criteria in the high tech series. It's just like they they tell you what they want,
Mhm.
and then everyone just does what they feel is right.
Yeah.
There's only probably a handful of people like Bo Yates, Matt Harvey,
Hmm.
and a few others that can actually go out there and do exactly what the judges want.
Yeah.
Like now that we got Stewie Bryant on the board, it's just
Hmm.
like, all right, now we've got some proper technical people
Yeah.
trying to get us to do some crazy ass shit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, just to like the holding so much angle is something that I haven't had to do for so long because we
Yeah.
it wasn't a requirement. Like
Yeah.
we didn't have to go out and do this fully sick angle because
Hmm.
no one else was.
Yeah.
So that's what was competitive.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was just like, so doing all these proper entries and stuff like that, it's just like it's something that was never required. Like I've come from Speedway, which is drive fast and get close to people and pass them. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm really good at is
Yeah.
driving fast and hugging someone's door because I'm used to having 20 cars on the track at a time
Yeah.
instead of two.
Yeah.
So, I love getting door to door and proximity, scaring the shit out of people.
Yeah. Well, you don't
Um,
look like you're very scared of it because I was watching one of the other your previous video.
mm,
Completely comfortable being on them.
oh, it's like hitting Bo Yates was the greatest thing that I've ever done. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I mean that completely rid all fear of chasing someone ever is hitting the guy that won the championship last year.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah, that was a real confidence booster.
Yeah.
Those stern words after the fact, but it's bump and rub. It's not like we're rolling each other over or anything like
Well,
that.
yeah,
So,
unless if you didn't T-bone him, then it's okay, I guess.
ah, I knocked the bloody valve off of his tire,
Oh,
off the rim,
okay.
and he debeaded. Like,
Oh,
I mean, how much lighter contact would you like? Just
yeah.
inconvenient contact.
Oh, do you have any other video you want to show, or is there pretty happy with all
Um,
what we looked at?
Probably if we scoot back to the last one.
Yep.
Um, don't know.
This one?
Um, yeah, that one. Probably if we go to the battle side of
Okay,
things.
sure.
Um, I think it's a little bit further along there.
Yep.
Yeah, here we go. Mitch Cole's the next one
Mhm.
up. he was a really odd driver to chase. Like one thing that I
Oh
really
yeah.
like doing is chasing. Like he would do the no angle thing,
Yep.
and then out of nowhere he'd just take off, and it's just like I don't know how. Like at the time, like this was literally my first battle of the weekend, just line
Mhm.
dip up in practice, and like it's same deal. Wise Fab supercharged LS,
Yep.
pretty much carbon copy of Luke Vestman's cars, my car,
Yep.
every other LS and Wise Fab car
Yep.
out there. But it was like he stayed on the outside and just no angle, no angle, and it was just very placid. But then out of nowhere, he's just like right here. He's just like, see you later.
Yep.
I'm up the hill. Um, and I was just like dumbfounded by that. And it was practice, so it wasn't, play Danny desperate and try and
Mhm.
catch up or anything like that.
Mhm.
But in that circumstance where I was pretty much full lock on the outside clip, like to sacrifice that, are we pretty much just straightening up and trying to catch up to him at that point in time? Or like I was just dumbfounded because I didn't think that car was that fast.
Yeah.
Um, hence why I was going so wide. Um, Actually
Turn it
hit the
up a bit.
barriers on the entry too. Yeah, for some reason I'm not getting your audio. Um, but
Oh,
yeah,
on the video.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I've just seen it 1,000 times though,
Okay.
so I've rewatched and studied all these more times than I probably should.
The only thing so
But
I can hear the only reason this guy would have pulled away at this point here is
mm,
because you had to, well, you didn't have to, but you backed off a lot more. Whereas
mm,
he's got no one in front of him, so he's just gonna put his foot down
just
and
full ball. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But all it takes is that 1 second of like throttle off, and you
Mm,
already lost the
mm,
wheel speed to be on the same momentum as him. But um,
yeah,
his entry is, I guess, like a maybe even more reserved version of what yours was at the beginning of the
yeah.
video. And you can see that the brakes are on as well. So it's just a full straight line and no commitment to
Left
the
foot.
angle.
Yeah, just a right foot. Handbrake, dab the brakes, let that rotate the car.
Yeah. So it's the same thing, but it's good for you to chase then because it's similar at this point
Yeah,
when you were driving, obviously. It's good for you at
and
this point.
but
So it's
like
just that.
it's fun. Like I think Billick's lead is one of the other ones where him, Matt Ventkirk, everyone that did that entry that you're talking about
Yep.
got it wrong and went wide. It was just like
Yep.
I know that's what we need to do, but refine it a bit more. But it's just like the
Hmm.
people that were doing it, the success rate was so low.
Mm.
I guess it just time, and Matt wasn't driving his own car; he was driving Bose, and it
Yep.
was a bit of a, I think I got 12 laps of practice that day or that
Hmm.
weekend. Sorry.
Hmm.
So we're all pretty strung out.
Yep.
But yeah, it's such a like, but every like uh Wake, Wakefield, Sydney Motorsports Park,
Hmm.
Queensland Raceway, Calder. The Bend's not really like that.
Yep.
They're all straight line
Oh,
entries into a 90-degree or varying corners. I
that
think
one
the
was better.
Bend,
Sorry.
Wakefield, yeah.
Oh, so yeah. Look at that big difference already.
Mm,
So that was
mm,
huge compared to what your other ones were. So, but like you can
yeah.
see how obvious the turn in is, right? So your hand more here. So you did more this way, unsettle, more over here. Look where your hand is over here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then look at your angle of the car, so much better.
That must have been the lap after I hit the wall and just
Didn't
gave
care.
no shits.
So I guess so as a competitive driver, like how you said before, the success rate of
Yep.
people getting it right, as a
Mm,
competitive driver, these are the small things that you have to
yeah.
make it work
Focus on.
95% of the time. You might
Yeah.
not get 100%, but this is
Yeah.
the particular skill that has to be,
Mm.
better because everyone can go and do, a handbrake drag or whatever
Uh,
and let the steering wheel
drag
spin.
entry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like, everyone can do that. So it's like, what do you need to do to be the next level and
Mm. Mm.
beat all those? And then the other
Yeah.
people that you compete with will probably be the other people that also have the same mentality of learning a couple of extra skills so they can get ahead.
Mm.
You do it all
It's
with,
great.
yeah.
Harvey entry.
Mhm.
Oh man, it is like the smoothest, silkiest. Like he's one of the guys that I know that can do it pretty
Mhm.
much 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And it's just like I watch it over and over and over again,
Mm.
and I just can't piece it together as to, I it's like it shakes my guts or something. My internal gyroscope says no,
Yep.
too much angle is scary.
Yep.
Um, there's another drive-in and handbrake entry,
Mhm.
old Mitch. Um, but yeah,
All
like
good.
it's as I was saying, like the rule of thumb is placid arse entry in the pro field.
Yep. Yep.
So it's never been a requirement to drive any harder.
Yep. I guess until everyone starts doing it, then the judges aren't going to know
Hmm,
better, depending on what
here
their
we go.
skill level is.
Billick. Yeah, Billick's another one that was doing pretty good entries, and that car's like pretty basic.
Hmm.
SRS 13,
Oh yeah.
old school build.
Hmm.
But man, it just like same deal when he enters. The car's mecha slow,
Hmm.
but like it'll just free flow into the from the fade into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's another straight line entry.
Yeah. It's just.
Hightech's really setting a good example of how to enter into a drift corner.
Yeah, it's just like the other guy you said before. It's just all a matter of how much throttle you wanted to use, which obviously he went
Yeah.
used quite a bit,
Mm,
especially. And
mm.
I think it tends to happen more when you have a lower powered car because you don't have the option of.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
full send or nothing.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's I really like one thing that I would, because I don't have you know practice car or anything. I've got my
Hmm.
370Z which I daily drive, but
Yeah.
don't really want to break that on myself. But I was almost thinking about coming down to WA
Hmm.
and hooking up with you guys for an event,
Hmm.
or just a practice day or whatever, and just like focusing on stuff like this, because like it's one thing to theorize, theoretically run through it, and I do it like I sim race pretty much 3-4 days of the week,
Yeah.
and I've been getting onto that stuff, but to actually sit in the car and physically do it,
Hmm.
and get back in a reasonable power car instead of something silly,
Yeah.
and physically push yourself to, as you said, low power car, you need to drive it into the corner more
Yeah.
because you don't have another option. That's one thing that I've been really deprived of for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
I haven't
Yep.
had anything like sub 500 horsepower to
Yep.
actually, like, I've broken my car a couple of times and jumped in like a RB20 Swift and sent that thing to the moon, which was a blast.
Yeah.
Um, Best car that I've ever driven.
Yeah.
GK Tech Superlock kit, stock
Yep.
RB20 with a T28.
Hmm.
Fucking mint. Went to
Yeah.
the top 8 in the Drift Origin up here.
Okay, that's
Um,
cool.
and the basic, like, barely had compression, let alone power.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was one of the cars where if you got off the gas, you were done. So it was just like, not no lift shift between every gear, and just. But it was one car that I entered super late because you didn't have any other options, and
Yeah.
just handbrake, hold the gas on, and it would snap to lock. But
Hmm.
now that I think about it, I was probably throwing it that hard and turning it that hard
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make it like to overcompensate for the
Yeah.
lack of motor vehicle I had under me.
Yeah. 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 So I guess it's
Because
like translating that across into your pro car.
mm, mm,
Not
which
you can't do it the same because obviously you got more power, so it will
yeah,
do more crazy shit.
more,
But yeah, you gotta
more
like
power, more grip. Yeah.
yeah, you just have to translate the same theory over
Mm,
across
mm.
and make it work.
Yeah, like we have like mecha, like we can completely change the attitude of the car though. Like with the
Hmm.
adjustable sway bars, all of the suspension is super adjustable. We can make it suit whatever,
Hmm.
um, which is what my dad and my crew chief Tony do.
Hmm.
Is they focus on the car setup, and I just tell them how it's driving, and they kind of just set it up to what they think it needs to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just like, like, because there is no textbook drift setup
No.
because everyone's style is different,
Yep.
and it's like, what direction do we go in? So I guess to be competitive with Matt Harvey and
Hmm.
stuff like that, is to focus on the textbook lead runs, which is something like I am the worst qualifier ever. Like
Scraping it in.
write me off.
Yeah.
I am not a qualifying man. I am a like Chelsea Denofa lately. Qualify at the back of the bus,
Yep.
chase first, and then with what tires you have left, go do your lead run.
Yeah. Yeah.
Win it in the chase. That's my style.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but oh man, these lead runs is just getting basic drift knowledge is something that I've never had anything good of.
Mhm.
Chase is easy because you just mirror whoever's in front of you.
Yeah. Like you got a guide in front of you.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. But
So like
doing
with
sorry.
you go. Sorry.
Doing all these things, improving in that aspect will help you more
Mm,
anyway, regardless. Like in the chase or in the lead,
yeah.
whatever it is, it's another tool in your box, I guess.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Like with your drift school down there, like
Mm.
would you be like if I were to well when life gets a little bit less hectic,
Mm.
would that be like if I were to come down and jump in one of your cars, is that something that you
Yeah,
would
we do
sit with
stuff
me
all.
and figure out?
Yeah, we got lots of different options. So
Mm,
whenever you
mm,
head down this way, then there's
yep.
always something to do. Um, if you ever have videos or whatnot, always welcome to
Mm,
send it through, and then we can do this again. This is probably the
yeah.
most
Yep.
efficient way, really. Yeah.
I'm at that point now where it's like, we're spending all this money building these cars. It's just like I'd get on a plane and come and sit with you in a car and figure it out proper
Yep. Yep.
because, that's it's an investment you got to make. When we're looking at going to New Zealand soon and,
Yeah.
World Time Attack, we got invited and all that
Hmm.
stuff. It's just like, well, I kind of need to drive better
Yeah.
to
Yep.
make it worth our time.
Yep.
So that's one thing. And I'm not sure how many guys you have come jump in your cars or whether it's just beginners mainly, but you know, it's not so much tandeming because that's easy once you figure out the rest of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just getting the niche techniques that I just haven't grown up with
Yeah. Yep.
that I really want to just nail down. Like
Yeah.
obviously I'll have plenty of videos and stuff from the testing that we do that I'll give all this a red hot crack at. But
Yep.
even then, I'd be keen to come down and
Yeah.
jump in
No
a car
worries.
with his and see what the go is. Because
Yeah.
it's just not an option in Darwin because
Yeah.
they're 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 very little events and it's you have your own car and you do you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. It's just getting out there and having the discipline, I suppose, to make
Mm,
sure that you do it. Because a lot of the time,
mm,
if you do it in competition, you're not going to try something new in competition because you can't
yeah,
risk that placing. But
yeah,
and you only get like
which
what
is
10, 12 laps to practice,
yeah,
like you said.
yeah. For
So
for a pro weekend, it's maximum 15 laps that I'll get for practice, and that's a good weekend
hmm. Hmm.
without breaking everything.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So yeah, if you get into a practice session, I mean, if you can do a practice event, then you can just
Mm,
try and do
mm,
try and put these into theory.
yeah,
But yeah, I
and
guess
have you ever seen the layout of Hidden Valley?
that's not the one that they do Origin on, is it?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
is that big one. It's like a left-hander,
Yeah.
is it? Yes.
We got two sections. So we got
Okay.
5, 6, 7, which is like a 90-degree right into a 180-degree left and
Yep.
into a 90-degree right.
Okay.
It's very, very basic. Then
Hmm.
the back section is like a big M or a W, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the mid section 5, 6, 7 is probably the one that I would focus on
Hmm.
because I was you know helping out at the on Sunday, well yesterday at the drift event, and a lot of guys were doing my placid entries,
Hmm.
and it's funny talking to you now and I got some in car of some of the other guys. I bought a new 360 camera, just stuck it in there for lols.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that I can watch back and see what everyone else is doing because
Hmm.
there was one guy that could actually get it to flick proper,
Yep.
conveniently enough, SIS 13. So that seems to
Yeah.
be the trend. Uh,
Yeah, it's just I guess the choice that power level is what forces you to learn those things because
yeah,
it's just not going to happen otherwise.
mm,
But yeah,
like
it
it's
all
been
stays the
six,
same.
7 years since I had an SR.
Yeah.
and it's like it was pretty much SRLS,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then just more power V8.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Cool.
interesting.
So
Certainly food for thought.
yeah. So just I'll have this recorded anyway, and then I
Yeah,
can send it
yeah.
to you if you ever want to refer back to it. But do you have any questions before
Um,
we finish up?
Not particularly. I've
Okay.
just got a lot of things to think about now.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
But it's good that you understand because you know exactly what you kind of need to do.
Mm, mm.
Very good for you going forward because if you don't understand, then obviously you don't know what to try next time. But next
Yeah,
time, if you watch back your videos, then you'll know that like, hey, shit, I didn't turn enough here or I didn't throttle to
yeah.
this. Yeah, so that's good. Hopefully, it's been helpful for you.
Certainly helps the one area that I really struggle.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I'll further develop and think further.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, man. I'll talk to you another time.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. See you, mate.
Cozy. Talk to
Bye.
you.